So we're going to go ahead and get started with our first presentation today, and this presentation is from Dr. Chris McBride, who is Executive Director of the organization SCI BC, or Spinal Cord Injury of British Columbia. His presentation is Commitment Issues, How to Get My Community Organization to Say Yes to an Integrated KT Project. If you have any questions during the presentation, please ask them in the chat box, and we will address them as we can, or we may hold them to the end, depending on how things progress and what your question is. Chris, are you ready to get started?
I am indeed.
Okay, let's go. Thank you.
Okay. Well, first let me start off by thanking the Center on Knowledge Translation for Disability and Rehab Research for this great opportunity to present at this online conference. This talk that I'm about to give really just started with a knowledge translation specialist here in Vancouver, British Columbia, who knew some of the challenges I faced in terms of dealing with the academic community and engaging in knowledge translation related research. And I did a small presentation to their community of practice that seemed to get the attention of a few folks that wanted me to do more on this topic, and really I'm pleased to continue to do that here today. So, as mentioned, the title of my talk is Commitment Issues, How to Get My Community Organization to Say Yes to an Integrated KT Project. And I hope some of the things you take away from today include a little bit better appreciation of the role that community organizations like mine as research users can play in the integrated knowledge translation process. Understand what can prevent organizations like mine from engaging in these types of projects, but more importantly, understand what it takes for me to, and organizations like mine, to actually commit to an IKT partnership. And I should say IKT, Integrated Knowledge Translation, is a term that I learned recently from one of my really great collaborators, who I'll be mentioning a little bit later, but it's really involving the research users in all stages of the KT process as equally respected and valued partners. So just a brief overview of what I'll be talking about today. Part one will just be a little bit of background on my organization and myself to provide some context for the next part, which is the barriers that I've seen many times in my work. Part three about what can we do to get to yes, and in the last part I'll give some examples, some good and some bad, and I will avoid the ugly. So before I actually start, I thought I'd just read an email that I receive probably 8 to 10 times a month. And this comes from keen researchers who are looking to engage me in their research and their knowledge translation activities. And it usually starts like this: hello, comma, and there's a total lack of personalization there. But I'm conducting an important study on spinal cord injury. To recruit participants for this study, we are reaching out to organizations working with the SCI population. Our hope is to reach participants through an email sent by spinal cord injury organizations to their respective members. We're also happy to have our invitation for participation in your newsletter to reach the maximum number of participants. Interested organizations can contact our research coordinator for further information. I believe the results of this study will be useful for participants as well as for the organizations that initiate work towards improving the health status of the spinal cord injury population. Thank you in advance for your support. Now, I do hope this email doesn't sound too familiar to you, but if it does, don't feel bad. I've received it even from good friends of mine who I've known for many years. But really, this type of email to me is basically spam, and it's not going to get me to say yes to an IKT partnership. That's kind of the overriding context, I guess, for the talk. So yeah, just to get started, a little bit about Spinal Cord Injury BC and me, and as I've given here, spoiler alert, this is the first step to getting me to say yes. So first, what is Spinal Cord Injury BC all about? And I try not to use acronyms as much as possible, but it'll probably slip some in there. And just so everybody is aware, SCI means Spinal Cord Injury, and SCI BC means Spinal Cord Injury Organization of British Columbia. We are here a provincial nonprofit organization that has been operating in the province for over 60 years now. And we serve about 2,000 people through our peer support programs and another 3,000 directly through our info services that we provide. So I always think that my members best describe the work that we do, and this is from a member from a couple years ago who said that Spinal Cord Injury BC is the go-to place for information and support from people who really know what you're going through and how to help you get back into real living. And they also, but I thought also words are one thing, but I thought maybe we could watch just a little video, and I'll cue that up in a sec here. Oh, here it comes now.
What are the feelings you have when you're first injured?
Wow, what a hard question to ask.
Disbelief, fear, anger.
Misunderstood and dark.
You begin to realize what condition you're really in.
It's the unknown. You lose the use of your legs and you feel like you're not whole, you're not normal, that no one is going to accept you anymore.
You think your life's over, and then you think, well, maybe I can make something of it.
A community like Spinal Cord Injury BC, I think, is essential.
Essential in the sense that the essence of hope.
Openness.
It feels like I'm in a safe place.
You get a feeling of warmth, of value.
SCI BC and the staff and the peers have just given me reason.
It makes me feel stronger in myself because I know somebody else is going through what I'm going through. To get back to employment, to get back to life, to get back to relationships. There's all these questions that can't necessarily be answered by the experts because the experts are the people living it.
And it wasn't until I actually really started participating with Spinal Cord Injury BC that I realized how much I do belong.
I do believe that there's magic in human connection.
I think magic is what keeps us, wanting to get up and see what's going on in a new day.
A reason to continue.
Something happening that you can't explain, but it was exactly what you needed.
Okay, so that wasn't just a cheap ploy to get you to donate. You can ignore that last little bit there. But why I thought that was important to share. This gives you some context for one of the important services that we provide, and it's actually the area in which we're doing a lot of integrated knowledge translation research with some really good academic partners, and we'll talk a little bit about that later too. So from our sort of corporate speak, what Spinal Cord Injury BC does is help people with spinal cord injury and their families adjust, adapt, and thrive as they deal with a new injury or struggle with the ongoing challenges of living and aging with a physical disability. And we do that primarily through our peer support services, but also our resource center, which has an online, very strong online component, but also a 1-800 toll-free info line number and lots of great resources that people can access in person or online. And then there's our communications piece, which is really important throughout the IKT process as well, as we provide a lot of great content that we share with our membership in a number of different ways. Woven throughout all of our all of our services is that core and that magic of peer support. And it's actually that magic that we're working with the researchers to kind of tease out a little bit and figure out how we can provide our services better. So when you're dealing with Spinal Cord Injury BC, you're actually dealing with 30 of us throughout the province of British Columbia up here in Canada. Well, it says 17 here, but actually in the last couple of weeks we've hired 2 more. So 19 people that work for Spinal Cord Injury BC have themselves spinal cord injury or another form of disability. So that's the part about people really knowing what you're going through and how to get you back into real living. We have some physical centers, and as I say, we have an online presence throughout the province. When it comes to the KT process, our information resource center is really important as well. And as I mentioned, InfoLine and a number of different specialty websites that we provide direct services through. Also, print. Our Spin magazine here, which goes out to over 4,000 addresses in British Columbia every quarter, is probably our most valued communications asset, and it's just a really great way to share information and disseminate information and activate people to make changes in their lives. So just really quickly about me, and I only present this history here just to emphasize that I'm sympathetic from the challenges of engaging community in the KT process, as I've been on the research side and probably spent more of my life in the research world than I have in community service world. Yeah, so throughout my life, I've been a spinal cord injury researcher, and then moved on to managing the ICORD Research Center here in Vancouver, which is one of the world's largest spinal cord injury research center that really integrates a broad range of researchers from cellular work to clinical work to engineering and to, well, now behavior change, which is very exciting. Through my work at the Disabilities Health Research Network, which was funded by the Michael Smith Foundation for Health Research here in British Columbia, we had a mandate to build capacity in community research capacity within research organizations, which was a challenging and rewarding process. And through my roles with the Rick Hansen Institute, also did a lot of national network building and partnership development with community organizations. And now here at Spinal Cord Injury BC, I'm really pleased to probably be doing more research than I ever did before in any of my other roles, because we have such great academic partners here that are really keenly interested in the work that we do. And I'm very excited to be moving forward with them on that. So partnerships are important to us, but why do we value them, and why do we bother engaging in them? Really, we need partnerships to advance our mission to help people with spinal cord injuries and their families. These types of partnerships take many forms. There's formal partnerships, there's plenty of collaborations, and then there's the other sponsorships, grant funding partnerships that we hold with many different organizations and groups. Key partnerships include other disability-focused community service providers, private sector, and we have lots of really great private sector partners that we work with here. Health authorities are hugely important to the work that we do, and we're very, very proud of our relationship with the Vancouver Coastal Health here and others. And of course, academic research institutions, which include the University of British Columbia and University of British Columbia Okanagan, McGill, University of Laval, and University of Toronto, just to name a few. I think one of the interesting things about engaging with a community partner like Spinal Cord Injury BC is you actually take advantage of working with a community organization that taps into a broader network of community stakeholders. And this is just one example here where we're one of 5 members of what's called the BC Spinal Cord Injury Community Services Network, which are 5 very strong and innovative community service organizations here in BC that do everything from employment to technology supports to wheelchair sports of various varieties. And recently we were just awarded $5 million from the provincial government to extend and build our network out so that we can reach more British Columbians with disabilities and improve their lives and their families' lives. And just quickly about the research and academic institutions that we're involved with, as I said, ICORD here in Vancouver is a really great place, and we have multiple levels of partnership with them, with their resource center and their accessible fitness center in the Plus and Spinal Cord Center. We partner up on scholarships and bursary processes, many research projects that SCI BC is involved in, either as a co-applicant or a community partner. Many knowledge translation activities, including Café Scientifiques, which we co-host and bring in the community to engage with researchers in an informal kind of setting. We host those, often webcast them and post them later. And of course, we do have a partnership that involves us directly supporting recruitment for research participation. And just quickly about UBC Okanagan, which I'm very excited about the growing wealth of talent that's there, involved in many research projects as a co-applicant and community partner and in many knowledge translation activities. So I guess the question is, if Spinal Cord Injury BC needs partnerships, then why is it so hard to get us to commit to them? Well, I'm going to start off with just a thought question here for you. When I first hear from research partners or potential partners, can you maybe guess what my favorite question from them is? Can you help me recruit participants for your study? Can you feature my research in your magazine and newsletter? How can I help? Can I put your name on my grant application? And would you like to be an author on this project's paper? So these are all questions I get all the time. Incentives, maybe you could look at them. But there's one that really stands out for me, and there's only one that really matters here. And my favorite question is, how can I help? And this is an actual quote from the first time I met integrated KT expert and research partner extraordinaire Heather Gameforth at the Applied Behavior Change Lab at UBC Okanagan. And so, as is so typical today, our relationship did start online. For the record, though, I will just be really clear. It was via Twitter, and it was totally only about research. But what Heather did when we connected, and this led to a phone call, and after a little bit of exploration about what spinal cord injury did and what her research focus was, Heather just really led with the question, how can I help? And that stimulated some really great conversation about what were really good research questions that would benefit both my organization and would be of interest to her research interests. So this has spawned a lot of really productive research that we're engaged in today, including one that I'm excited about, developing some guiding principles for knowledge translation activities in spinal cord injury research. That work has just got underway. So just extending the dating piece here, a little bit meeting online or whatever, but so I sort of feel like developing academic community knowledge translation partnerships is a bit like dating, and like any sort of dating scenario, the first date is the critical date. And like so many dates, the first one can be a challenge. And if unsuccessful, it's really going to be a turnoff for committing to a future engagement. So what are some of the common pitfalls here of that first date? Well, I'll go through each of these in detail in a minute here, but just as an overview, false assumptions and sort of the overly optimistic date that assumes that they're far more interesting than they are probably to the other partner. Expecting something for nothing, this I describe as the cheap date, and it's important to remember that we both need to get something out of a partnership. One-sided engagement is a very common turnoff where it's really all about either the academic partner or in some cases maybe it's all about the community partner. And all of this can result in tokenism, which maybe is a bit like the arrogant date. So when it comes to false assumptions, and I've I know I've been a researcher, and I've worked with researchers for decades, and I know how passionate they are about their work and ideas, and they're very excited. They love to talk about it, and I think they assume that everybody else is also interested in it. And while their projects may be of really great academic interest, the studies aren't always as interesting and valuable to organizations like mine or their members as the researchers think that they might be. All too often, the academic partner will expect something for nothing and assume that I'll be really willing to dedicate a lot of my human resources and infrastructure to help with their project for free. And to be honest, I rarely am, because probably the project isn't as valuable to me as they think it is as well. And so, like most nonprofits, Spinal Cord Injury BC can't afford to be a cheap date. In terms of one-sided engagement, when the balance of power is held by the academic partner and the scope of my participation or my organization's participation is too trivial, I'm probably not going to be all that interested in partnering. This is because if we don't really have an opportunity to shape the project, the methods and findings are probably not going to be as relevant as they could be, and the project is more than likely to either be delayed or to fail altogether. And tokenism is a word that I know many of you are probably very aware of. It's a kind of a dirty word, and it's where the role of the organization, community organizations, diminished to one of real triviality. And merely being sort of a conduit for recruitment notices or newsletter story about a research project is not really enough. And as we've heard, well, as you know, many of the granting applications, including Neither Now, require a community partnership knowledge translation plan. And if we just become a checkbox to say that you've included a community partner in this without really engaging us in a meaningful way in shaping the project, that's tokenism, and it really demeans the value of my organization, and I'm probably not going to be all that interested in partnering. Okay, so those are the pitfalls, but how do we get to yes? And so here are 6 tips on getting Spinal Cord Injury BC, anyways, to commit to an integrated knowledge translation partnership. And the first is arrive early and get to know me and my organization. This will set up everything else that's on the list here, and which includes listening carefully. It's important that we end up speaking the same language. The relevancy of the project is really important. And it's important for each partner to understand the value proposition and bring that value to the project. And of course, it probably goes without saying, but it's important to note anyways, that both parties must be respectful of each other and the roles that they can play in the project. So when it comes to arriving early and getting to know us, the most successful partnerships happen when engagement starts really at the planning stage of the project, preferably before the grants are written or in the process of the writing the grants. What happens all too often is that the request to partner comes far too late in the process, often just a couple of days before grant deadline, or even after a project's been funded and ethics approvals have been granted, and then the academic partner is trying to figure out how they're going to implement their project, and will come to me and say, hey, can you partner on this project that I've got going, and it probably isn't going to align as well as it could, and be too challenging for us to undertake at that point. And really, what's happening when an academic partner comes to us late in the game, they're coming to us with a take it or leave it offer, and in most cases, my response is going to be to leave it. Listening carefully is really important, and Heather demonstrated that to me in the first time that we had a conversation, and it's really what spurred a lot of creative thought around research projects that we have subsequently engaged in. it allows the partners to share what's important, what are the important questions about the area of interest, what is most relevant, and importantly, what is feasible. By listening to the community organization, the researchers can develop a whole bunch of great ideas and options for research questions, and they may not all be, the ones that are ultimately decided on. That's a joint production to come up with the actual research project, but creating a menu of options is really exciting for both parties. And by listening to the researchers, community partners can co-develop the plans that can achieve success through feasible design and shared motivation. And I think that motivation piece is really important. And when listening happens and great conversation happens, both parties can be equally motivated to achieve success through the project. Now, I know that having been in the academic world and now being in the community world, I think I'm somewhat bilingual because I know that the two worlds speak very different languages and often use very different words to describe the same things. So it's really important that specific attention be paid to ensuring that all partners are using a common language. Otherwise, there'll be all sorts of different assumptions made, and things can go off the rails fairly quickly. I'd like to emphasize that this is not a matter of academic partners dumbing things down. I hear that all the time, and it's actually rather insulting. My staff, for example, are really smart people. They just use different words to describe things. So it's not a matter of dumbing things down. It's just a matter of using a common language. The relevancy piece is very large in our decision-making process, and this is where the early engagement and the listening and using the right language do pay off. Taking time up front to understand what the community organization does, which is why I gave you a little snapshot of what Spinal Cord Injury BC does, and what it or even its members' priorities are, will help to ensure that the research questions and the approach align with the organization's vision and mission. That's really important. We're not going to do things that are too tangential to our vision and mission. That the project can align or even enhance operational capacity. And the more closely a project relates to our standard operations, the easier it is for us to engage in that project. And also, when there's a great potential to enhance outcomes of our services to be realized through the partnership, and this is an example with our peer support that a number of researchers are engaged in with us. We're excited because the questions that they're asking from the research perspective are directly related to the peer support services that we provide, and we believe that there's a potential for us to enhance the outcomes of our services through this partnership that we have. Which gets to the value, and it's important that all parties do understand the value proposition relating to their investment in this partnership. And I guess the one thing I like to emphasize is people often maybe don't realize running a nonprofit doesn't mean that we're not running a business. And maybe we don't go after profit, but we do go after revenue, and we need revenue to keep ourselves going, which means that we can't really afford to do things for free. But I also like to emphasize that the value isn't always in money. Value can come in many different ways. If a project involves something that will lead to an increased competency of my staff, that's a huge value. If the partnership results in enhancing the outcomes and impacts of our services, that's also of huge value. Often, the evidence developed through the partnership will help build a case that will support our operational sustainability, obviously of huge value to us. And then providing direct and tangible benefits to our members is really something that we will consider as well. But I do like to emphasize that if money can be brought to the table, that always does help. But I also should say that we don't chase money. So if it's not relevant and if it's not aligning with our vision and mission, we're not just going to go after and chase money, because that ends up being more work and costly than it might appear. So just finally here, being respectful, obviously respecting the value and the unique strengths of each partner and what they can bring to a partnership, but also to understand the challenges and the barriers that the partners face in doing in participating in the project is really essential for the success of the project. This, all this, and ensuring that co-responsibility for the project development and decision making, this idea of co-production of the knowledge is really a part of the respect that we expect when we enter into these types of partnerships. And when you combine the respect, being respectful with the previous 5 tips, to us that this is really the antidote to the issue of tokenism. So now I'll just go into a few examples. A couple where one where we say no, and a couple where we ended up saying yes. And I start with this, and as I've given this example a couple times to a broader and broader audience, I will emphasize that in doing so, in providing this example of a case where I said no, I'm not trying to chastise the academic partners in this process. It's just a really good example of something that could have been so much better, and we could have done something together if the process had been right. And what came to me and my organization was a finished product, basically, that was called Spinal Cord Injury Manifesto for Change. That's pretty provocative. That's some pretty strong rhetoric, and it sounds kind of awesome. I mean, really, like, who wouldn't want to support a manifesto for change when it came to spinal cord injury? Well, in the end, it was SCI BC that didn't want to support that, and there's lots of reasons for why. And you can probably guess based on what I've got up here and what I've gone through before, but the timing was a fail. So there was no involvement of my organization or even some of my partners, counterparts from across the country in different provinces in the development of the document or the project itself. That meant that our role at this point was really only in dissemination, and in fact that was exactly the request that came to us. Can you help us get this piece of, which is really an advocacy piece, out? Well, if we weren't involved, it wasn't probably going to be as relevant, because although the 3 conditions that they were advocating for improved health services for were all important, they weren't the top priorities for our members. And if we're going to burn some political capital on an advocacy piece like this, we really need to make sure that we're doing so on the highest priority issues. In this case, they weren't the highest priority issues. So getting involved actually presented some degree of reputational risk for us. Really, there was very little value in what was being presented. I mean, potentially for our members, there could have been some improved health services if it was going to be successful, but it wasn't clear that there was going to be any success through this piece. So, so the value probably wasn't there. And just based on all those first 8 fails, I would say there was really not enough respect for the role that we could play in this process. So in this case, we declined the opportunity to be a partner. This is a case of where we're saying yes, and the image here isn't showing up, but what it is a wallet card that was developed in partnership with researchers, clinicians here at our GS Strong Rehabilitation Center, and our members here at Spinal Cord Injury BC. And it's a wallet card for what is called autonomic dysreflexia, which is a life-threatening condition that many people with spinal cord injury face, but it's a very odd set of symptoms that most emergency room doctors or even general practitioners won't recognize and might not respond in a way that, a timely way or even an appropriate way for the patient's health. So we co-developed this card that our members could present to the clinician should they be experiencing autonomic dysreflexia in the clinical setting. All the partners got together very early in the process, and we worked hard to make sure that the information was presented in a language that was A, appropriate for our members, and B, appropriate for the clinicians that would be receiving the information. It was important that the information presented on it also be valid and that would be trusted based on who was involved in the partnership. We at Spinal Cord Injury BC help with the design and the delivery, and we give these out to all of our members as they go through the rehab process and as they return to the community, and we keep reminding them about it. So the value here is that there was no money in it for Spinal Cord Injury BC, and we actually cost us a little bit in printing costs, but this is something that can save the lives of our members, and we feel that that's enough value for us to invest in this piece. So here's another example of somewhere where we said a partnership that we said yes to, and this is not just the Canadian Disability Participation Project itself, which is a national project led by Dr. Kathleen Martin-Guinness at University of British Columbia, Okanagan, which is involves almost 50 academic and community partners across not only Canada, but with some international partners as well, to enhance community participation amongst people with physical disabilities. So the big project itself, we're very proud to be a partner of, and it's also all the projects, well, a number of the projects that are being undertaken through the Canadian Disability Participation Project that we are participating in. And why we are involved is because, again, we were involved very early in the project's conceptual development phase, and we had influence and an opportunity to help co-develop the project itself and some of the sub-projects that are going on today. We spent a lot of time up front ensuring that a common language was used, and this was particularly relevant to our peer support work, where there are a number of different terms used by different groups to describe peer mentorship and peer support and all these things. And had we not done that, there would have been great confusion, and I think that the validity of the results would have been greatly compromised had we not agreed upon a common lexicon. The research partner here ensured that the priorities of community groups and community partners were very well understood and included. Many of the projects that we're engaged in take advantage of our existing services. So this really minimizes the impact of our participation and builds in a lot of value for our participation. There was thoughtful remuneration for our involvement, so there was a monetary component, very small but thoughtful. But also we take advantage of many other really great opportunities, such as getting to go to meetings where we can network and meet our colleagues and network. And this is always very hard for nonprofit organizations to afford to do, to go to conferences, to go to meeting with their professional peers, be it throughout the country or internationally. So lots of ways that value is brought to this project, and lots of ways that respect is built in throughout the whole process. So this is another example, and I will also add that of a project that was funded in part by the Rick Hansen Institute as well, but Spinal Cord Injury BC and ICORD enjoy a really unique partnership in terms of the level of connection we have and participation we have together in knowledge translation activities, be it for specific projects or for more higher level initiatives as well. And here, this is an example of a series of videos that we created to help encourage our members to participate in research. We know there's a high demand by researchers who are engaged in human-based research activities for people to participate in their studies. But we also know that there's a relatively low demand by our members to actually engage in those research centers, and participating in studies is a rate-limiting step. And what I'm pleased to hear the feedback from our research partners who have we've helped recruit for studies that through our partnership with ICORD, we've actually reduced the time for recruitment by half in many of their projects. So we feel like that's a really valuable piece for both sides. And so just maybe watch this fun little video here of the stopwatch sessions that we created to encourage participation.
Does anyone understand pain? Hey Kip, I hear you have a study on pain.
I do.
So I am about to give you 45 seconds to tell me why someone would want to be in your study. You ready?
Ready?
Go.
Okay, so we don't know a lot about pain, and therefore we can't treat it very well. So what we're doing to learn more about pain is image. We image the spinal cord in the brain. We do that using MRI, so what people get to do is they get to go into this very small little tunnel hole-like thing, which is amazingly claustrophobic, and can be a little bit uncomfortable for some people, not all people. But the fun part is, at the end, you get to see this very lovely picture of your spinal cord and your brain, which is pretty amazing when you think about it. I mean, it's this amazingly complex structure that you don't get to see every day, and then we have this beautiful picture that you get to take home. Am I out of time?
Almost, but you didn't tell us if there an honorarium?
There is for, a small honorarium for, that we try to reimburse your time and for parking and stuff like that. Pain is it's a major problem for people with spinal cord injury. I've learned a ton just from talking with people with spinal cord injury about pain. And hopefully we can find out what's causing it and then give them some better treatment, because really they have nothing that ultimately helps them. When people are in pain, there's a couple of pills that they can take, but by and large they're completely ineffective, so ineffective. Leave that part out.
We will totally keep that
yeah, that's going to look bad.
Awesome.
I know my PhD in English, apparently.
Okay, so that gives you a little flavor of a series of videos that we did, and Kip, you may actually be watching, but Kip and the other researchers are really good sports there. We just wanted to kind of humanize our research partners a little bit and get our members excited about participating in research and thinking about the value that participating could bring beyond just advancing the field itself. So I'm going to end on this thought here. It's obviously a lot of work to develop a partnership with a community organization. So is it really worth all that bother when you could just really have a patient or a consumer representative be involved instead? It's a question I get quite a bit, and it's something I actually feel very strongly about. And I'll say right up front that the best scenario is both. Have both if you can. If you can only have one, I advocate very strongly for having the community organization involved. And I'll describe that why here a little bit. And so here's a table. They have some pros and cons here of, well, I guess they're not really pros and cons, but some reasons why you would have a community patient or consumer representative versus a community organization. As I said, if you can have both, that's where the most power comes in. But with a patient or a consumer representative, you get the really important power of the personal impact story. This can really be hugely beneficial to a project in understanding what's important to an individual and be highly motivating for people. The problem is you are only getting the one viewpoint with that individual. Whereas where you're dealing with a community organization, you get the advantage of perspectives reflecting really diverse set of experiences and the priorities of a very large membership. And for a group like Spinal Cord Injury BC, which has been operating for 60 years and has the history of literally thousands of people and their stories, we can reflect a much broader set of experiences and priorities. With a patient or consumer representative, there is a risk of attrition during the process, whereas a community organization can actually bring a pool of representation that was more likely to ensure some level of continuity throughout the research or KT process. With an individual representative, there is a limited ability to amplify knowledge translation related to communications and dissemination or implementation. Facebook and stuff is great, and everybody has their networks of support. But with a community organization, which typically has a large contact list and communication channels, there's a much greater opportunity to amplify KT-related communications. It's true that dealing with an individual representative comes with probably fewer bureaucratic channels. And there are higher transaction costs when you're dealing with a community organization. But I think that those transaction costs are really far worth it. And as I said, I'm a very strong advocate for including the voice of organizations, and which really means including the voice of their memberships as opposed to a member in the KT process. This is just one example of a partnership that included patients, consumer representatives, and community organization, which was Spinal Cord Injury BC. So at the initiative of an individual with spinal cord injury who happened to be a clinician as well, and a member of our organization, who experienced challenges in the whole pregnancy process, and wanted to improve the clinical experience for other women who were going through the whole pregnancy and childbirth process with spinal cord injury. So we formed what was called the Spinal Cord Injury Perinatal Interest Group, which included individuals with spinal cord injury. It included Spinal Cord Injury BC, but also included clinicians, researchers, and KT experts. And together, working with a large stakeholder group, we led a very collaborative process that developed consensus on care in Canada and really some really great information resources for people with spinal cord injury and clinicians, and has stimulated further work in terms of research and the development of more processes and guidelines and whatnot that are currently being worked on. We're very excited about this, and I think this really shows the power of bringing the individuals in who really help make the case through their personal impact stories. And then Spinal Cord Injury was able to provide a broader perspective of the challenges our members face, not only here in Metro Vancouver, but throughout the province, those living in rural regions and other places as well. So that really brings me to the end of my presentation. Just on this slide, provided some further reading, and I encourage you, if you are so inclined, to read my blog post, which basically is this presentation is a summary of. Also, which was a two-part piece done with Dr. Heather Gameforth at UBC Okanagan, where we explored our commitment issues to engaging in community academic KT partnerships. And then there's a bunch of other resources here. We have a bunch of other videos that you can watch. If you like the stopwatch video, there's a few more, and you can watch some more videos about what we do. Our Spin magazine, as I said, is a really great vehicle for knowledge translation. We love to tell research stories, human interest stories, and in every story that we tell, we weave in the perspective of our members into that. We feel it's really important to present them from the perspective or the interest of people with spinal cord injury, and we really work hard to ensure the relevance of these stories to them. And with that, I will conclude my talk.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. That was great. That was a really very wonderful presentation. I think your videos were excellent. We got a lot of comments on those. We did, in just discussing amongst ourselves, we had a question. How difficult is it to make those videos, and how expensive is it to make those videos? I know we don't have a lot of time for questions, but did you have a professional team or a video company? How did you do that?
Right. Excellent question. So we did all of those videos in-house. I'm lucky to have a really incredible communication specialist and a willing group of people to participate in those videos. The videos themselves, incredibly cheap to shoot. The challenge that we face with the videos is just the time to edit them, and given all the other activities that we're involved in, time is always so precious, and so time is the biggest challenge in creating videos like that. But they're not expensive. It's just a human resource issue.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. We do have a few questions, but we don't really have very much time. So let's see. One question was from Heather Gainforth. Chris, how would you suggest we describe these videos for ethics applications?
Well, that's probably not a question that I can answer very well, but I think what would have to be done is those videos would have to be planned out during the conception phase of the project to ensure that they're kind of built into the project plan. And I guess if you have clarity about what you're presenting in those videos, that you could build some ethics in around them. I guess the ethics is always a bit of a gray area with what we do because we're not with the videos and a lot of the recruitment things that we're doing. We're not actually part of the project, and we're just taking information from a website and putting it out there. But when you're involving the researchers in that video, it might create a bit of a gray area. I'm not sure. But I think that building it in early in the project planning phase would probably be a smart idea.
Thank you. We do have a question from Pinjai. You said that when what happened when the contact person left the organization, the collaboration fizzled. Can you comment about that and any strategies that might help with that?
Well, in terms of attrition of representation on the partnership?
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess when you have an individual consumer or patient representative, it's just that individual that's there. And so when they leave, it does become challenged because there's really no continuity of that individual's story or their perspective. And so you kind of have to bring in a new one, which may be different than that individual's. But if you're dealing with a community organization and we've assigned maybe one person to be the point person on the project, that person will be bringing the perspective of the organization and its members and the priorities. And so if that person from the organization is not available, we can just fill that in easily with somebody else. And there's going to be a continuity of perspective and knowledge that will be retained within the project. So it buffers against the loss of that individual representation.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Chris. Again, that was a great presentation. We are out of time right now, but we did write down some of these questions. We'll hold them, and we can bring them up again at the discussion session that will take place at the end of the day. We look forward to hearing more from you, Chris, when we do get back together for the interactive discussion system. Thank you.
Excellent. You're welcome.